Hi, Shadia.
Good evening, Sir Silas.
Hello, confirm you can hear me loud and clear?
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
just doing my mic check. Thank you.
all right, sir.
All right, good evening, class. You're welcome to yet another weekend of Electoral College. I'm minded to just start the class immediately because we said it's 5 p.m. Our facilitator is already in class. Please confirm you can hear me loud and clear before I go on.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. But just for the sake of peace, we'll give the usual 5 minutes before we start. Please call your class members, your party members, party chairman, reach out to your members. Everybody should come into class. We start immediately at 5:05. Thank you. Good evening, class. I think we'll go right away. You're welcome to yet another class. As you join,
Good evening, Talia. Did we just lose Silas?
Okay, yes, he's out of the call. Good evening, Dee. Okay, good evening,
Okay.
everyone. Okay, he's back.
You are okay. I was going to take the I'm just having issues. So I think I'll take the bio myself. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dee.
good evening. Confirm you can hear me. Sorry, I got kicked out.
Silas, can hear you. Are you okay to take the bio?
Yes, I am. I'm good to go.
Okay, please go ahead. But before you speak, I'd first like to say thank you very much to Egbon Babasola Kuti, who's always been a senior brother to the college.
Can't hear you again, Edie.
So, hello? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Dee, we can hear you.
Okay, so it's Silas that has the issue. I'll just go ahead and take the bio. So, Babasola Kuti has been a father to the college. He has been a strong supporter. He's someone whom I have deep respect for. He's someone who has crossed quite different boundaries. So Baba Kuti is a seasoned politician, an entrepreneur, social analyst, holds a degree in business information systems with human resource management from Middlesex University Business School in London. Founder of Afri Products Limited in 1999, he has led innovative ventures for over 16 years, spanning fresh juice, smoothie chains, luxury goods, business development, consultancy, telecoms, infrastructure, oil and gas, exports, and trading. Afri Products technology arm, in a joint venture, introduced a smaller denomination mobile recharge vouchers in Nigeria and launched the country's first e-commerce enabled website circa 1999. Shola Kuti's political journey includes serving as a special assistant to Senator Tokes Ogunbanjo in Nigeria, in the Nigerian Senate from 2003 to 2007. Not a political novice himself, he aimed for the governorship of Lagos in 2015, running an impressive campaign. Additionally, he contributed to the PDP Presidential Campaign Council in 2011 and 2015 elections, advocating for the party's ideals on various platforms, including multiple TV appearances. Babasola Kuti is passionate about youth involvement in politics. Shola mentors young entrepreneurs. He didn't add it, but he mentors young politicians also like myself, which I'm privileged to be part of his academy, emphasizing the importance of their participation. My Egbon, my lecturer, my brother, there are so many names I can call you. His English is also better than mine, so I'm learning English from Babasola Kuti. I present to you Babasola Kuti, a no small sage in this conversation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I almost didn't recognize who you were talking about with all the praise.
It's not being modest.
Thank you, and it's nice to be here again. I'm always happy to, support the Electoral College. In fact, I should be the one saying thank you to you for having me, because my dream was always to be able to give back to the next generation and help them, to avoid the minefields that we didn't know existed when we joined politics. So it's a pleasure to be here. As I take, as I speak through, the slides, please feel free to interrupt if you want to ask a question or to have a discussion. I don't mind. I want this session to be interactive rather than just me speaking for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And I hope you enjoy the class. Let me try and load up the slide and see if you can see it. If you can see it, just confirm to me that you can. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
sir,
see
we
it.
can see your slide.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to be speaking today, as usual, on the role of opposition in Nigerian politics. What I try and do is to basically take you through, a few examples of, first of all, to define what opposition is, and then I take you through a few examples of, the types of, party structures we have. And I always like to compare the UK with Nigeria, and you see why when I do the comparison in a few slides. Then I will talk about bad opposition and give you examples. I'll talk about what good opposition means. And then we'll have a discussion after I do my conclusion. And hopefully, I hope that by the time I'm done, you learn a thing or two at least. So the first thing we're going to do is, try and explain what opposition in politics is. Now, generally speaking, opposition is anybody, any political party that is not in power. That is the true definition. But in countries such as the UK, where you have a parliamentary system, which is basically you don't have a presidential system, you have a prime minister and you have a parliament full of members of the House of Reps, so to speak. They're called members of parliament. The opposition is always the largest non-government party or coalition of parties in the National Assembly. So for instance, in that regard, the opposition would be the PDP plus the Labour Party plus all the other parties that are not in government coming together to challenge the policies of government. That would be the best definition. So if you're not in power, you are opposition, essentially. And that would be strange because in some of the states where, for instance, the PDP is in power, the opposition parties will then change and become all the other parties that are not in power. And some of the states where Labour Party is in power, again, you will find that opposition will be composed of parties who are not necessarily in opposition at the top. So you find that because we have that state system, you also have that you don't just have one opposition party at federal level and then the same goes across the states. You have a mixture, which should make it interesting. Now, what is the main role of opposition? I always tell people, and I explain. I know a lot of the young people are more combatant, especially on social media. And I always tell them that the role of opposition is not to fight government. It is to question the government and hold them accountable. That is the role of opposition. It's not to abuse people or call people names or try and topple government. That is not the role of opposition. It is to question the government and hold them accountable. So essentially, look at what government is doing. You look at your own policies and plans, because it's not enough to just say you are doing it wrong, which has always been, I think, the bane of our politics in Nigeria. If you look over the years, one person is in government. Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's clueless. He's weak. He's this, he's that. You bring the strong man into government, then the strong man all of a sudden too is now weak, and then you bring the father of all Democrats into government, and again, he looks weak. So you can see that without actually trying to deliberately solve some of these problems that occur when you are in opposition, without making plans and making policies that would address the bigger issues, yes, you can use your rhetoric to run government down and push them out of power, but you find that when you yourself get into power, you become government and you then see that those problems are live and you don't have a solution for them. And that is what has happened over the last sort of like 9 years. So how does opposition fulfill this role of criticizing government and holding them accountable? It is by looking at government policies, as I said, and criticizing where necessary. Where necessary is as important as anything else in that sentence. In fact, it's the most important. You don't criticize when it's not necessary. You commend, and then you criticize when it is necessary. And then you always have to propose an alternative solution if you criticize a particular policy or a particular government directive. It's not enough to just say it is not good to drive in reverse without saying what you should do. So it's always nice to have an opinion on things. And then we go into factors, things that help us to have a good opposition. And the first thing I always talk about is the free and fair elections. If you have a good election, you would have an opposition that is not bitter. You would have supporters that are not bitter, that will look critically at issues and be able to tell government the raw truth in a nice way. You don't have to be abusive, harsh when you're in opposition. You can tell government, look, what you're doing is going to fail. And when it does fail, at least they will know they heard it from you first. And perhaps they might say to you, okay, you know what? Let's look at this, your plan. Maybe it might work for us. But when you don't have free and fair elections, as we've had in the last election cycle in particular, I think we had the opportunity, because we didn't have an incumbent, to have a perfectly free, fair, and just election. And unfortunately, they didn't allow that to happen. Now, when you go on social media or you see people on TV, talking heads from political parties speaking, it is with such bile and such anger and you hear some sort of words that are being used. You see the ethnicity picture, being bandied every time there's an argument. You just know that something has created that tension, and that's because we didn't have a free and fair election. We also need a good political climate. We need a climate that allows criticism, that nurtures dissenting opinion. We don't want a climate where if you see anything, next thing, DSS at your house, or police, or they remember that you stole banla in the market 200 years ago and come and arrest you. We don't want that kind of climate where people are afraid to speak. And then the third thing I'll say is that we need support from citizens. This is what I talked about. Party supporters being angry and being aggressive. You also need you need kind of like a mass movement of opinions. I still don't see that cohesion within the political parties who have lost that in this election. At the federal level. I don't see that them speaking with one voice on certain issues. I can see some of the members of the House of Assembly, House of Reps, Senate, now kind of like, going on their own agenda. And this is another danger when we talk about that good political climate that comes from people just coming to a party to win an election, not actually being a member of that party for a while, not actually imbibing the political principles of that party. And people will argue that maybe the party don't even have principles, but the truth is that they do. The sad part is that mostly it's only people that have money that win elections in Nigeria. And people that have money can go to any political party and buy a ticket. That's the honest truth. So that is one of the things that we need to look at as, especially you guys in your generation, to find out how to break the duck. I think I have to say this, and I have to say this every time I do this from now on, that Peter Obi has proven that you don't have to spend all the money in the world to win an election. That thing that our parents used to say that used to annoy us, that a good name is better than silver and gold. We used to think, no, we want silver and gold. But Peter Obi has proven that with just over $1 billion, I can almost win a presidential election, if not win it. And I think you can see how important the support from the citizens is when it comes to someone like that, who didn't even have to spend, a lot of his own money. So let's look at some factors that prevent good opposition. We will be the opposite of what I've just said most of the time. So is that hostile climate that, includes the threat to freedom of speech and association, is that lack of support from citizens, is the poor quality leadership in opposition political parties, as I spoke about how somebody can just come with 100 million naira cross carpet to a party, give all the people in the NWC money, maybe 5 billion. Next thing he emerges as candidates because they hold the say. We don't want that kind of leadership in political parties because it's actually how the bad governance starts. When the quality of representation, the quality of candidates are now not being determined by the integrity of the candidate, the qualifications of the candidate, the abilities of the candidate, when they're being determined by money. And essentially, an armed robber can buy a ticket in a good party and win an election and become president or governor or member of the House of Rep or Assembly or Senate. And we also, I mentioned how I haven't seen that cohesion from opposition parties talking with one voice, holding government to accountable together. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the results of the last election, it is obvious to all of us that perhaps if the parties had worked together, they would have beaten this government by at least 2 times the number the government had. But they didn't, and you can see it again that the strategy is still wrong, because criticizing criticizing the ruling party with various voices, with various, it just creates an atmosphere of confusion, because the Labour Party will talk their own, PDP will talk their own, ADC will talk their own, and they're not sending the same message. I mean, they shouldn't be saying exactly the same thing, but there should be some points of agreement that, are in tandem with, what opposition should be doing. So I'm going to give 2 examples of poor opposition, and they're completely different on different sides of this one is a policy issue, the other one is an integrity issue. So I've used this example in all my studies because honestly, every time I try and do this lecture, I always try and say, let me look for another example. But honestly, there is no example that beats this one in terms of policy. You know why? Because I used this when Buhari was president, it was relevant. I'm going to use it again when Tinubu is president, and it will still be relevant because we still have a fuel subsidy problem today. And essentially in 2014, it was largely, based on and driven by emotion and this need to paint the Goodluck Jonathan government as bad, that they wanted to remove fuel subsidy and put Nigerians in penury. At that time, even the price that they were saying fuel would be is probably half of what it is today, and I do agree that it was a policy that would definitely bring hardship in the short term. But I believed in my heart, and I was one people that opposed this policy, even though I was a member of the PDP at the time, because I said that I wanted to see what the cushioning effects being rolled out first before the policy was implemented. That was my only grounds. I didn't think it was a bad policy because it cost the country too much money. But I thought, I want to see how you're going to mitigate against this first. Show us the things that you are doing that will reduce the suffering of the people. And in those days, I remember there were thousands of buses given to people. I know people that got the buses, even though they were giving some PDP members, family members, but the idea is that there was a transportation scheme that was going to reduce the price of transport, and because they were giving them at a cheap rate, they had a duty to make sure that the price of their fares to and fro different parts of Nigeria did not exceed a particular threshold. So then back then, opposition said fuel subsidy did not exist and was a scam, was a fraud, and they resisted the removal of fuel subsidy. Today, even after the president said on inauguration day that there's no more fuel, we're still subsidizing fuel today. And the price has increased far beyond what Jonathan tried to do at the time. But the interesting thing is that people that are doing this are actually the same very people who went on the streets and shut Nigeria down for a week or two because of this same fuel subsidy removal. So it shows you that the whole policy wasn't thought about, or like I said, people were not really interested in the policy. They just saw something that would anger Nigerians and they jumped on it and helped to create the hate that then drove Jonathan out of office. in addition to all the other Chibok saga and all that. But you can also see that even the Chibok issue, I think maybe I'll add it to the next time I do this lecture, has also become an issue because just a few days ago, a similar number of children were kidnapped from even Kaduna, not now some village that we don't know. You know, again, this government was highly critical. In fact, they championed and marshaled the what became known as BBOG, Bring Back Our Girls campaign. They financed it and they supported the team, led by Aisha Yesufu and that lady that became Zainab, I can't remember, that became MPA MD, and they basically supported that movement at the time because, again, they only looked at what they could gain from it. They weren't thinking about what Nigeria could gain from actually solving that problem. So nobody actually came up with a solution. He just thought, oh, you know what, this thing plus the fuel subsidy, Jonathan will go and will win the elections. But the question I always ask opposition, when you win the election, then what? These problems are still going to be there and they're still going to need solutions. So this is my latest addition to another poor example of opposition. When 5 members of a party that they're not in government, they're in opposition. If they're in government, you can even understand it, that they have power and they know that to get power away from their own party, they will have to do and undo. But they are already at a loss before the election starts. But they now decide that, you know what, we are going to go and work with Tinubu, another party, the largest, strongest, the incumbent party, to install a leader because we are not happy that our party did not take the leadership of the country to the south. We know from what we now know that it wasn't really about a southern president. It was just disguised as a power shift call to the south. It was actually a selfish agenda to create an atmosphere where at some point in time, one of them will become a presidential candidate in the PDP, and maybe in future, in the next 4 to 8 years, will now be able to become president. So rather than allowing a PDP person to win, they will say, you know what, let's go and let that guy win. He can't last 4 years because as we are looking at him, it's either something will happen to him or his government will fail. And then we will now be able to benefit from this. I strongly believe, and I've said this even within the PDP, even before the elections of 2023, that these same people worked against Peter Obi and Atiku in 2019. This is the worst kind of opposition you can imagine, and like as we sit here now and look at the country, we cannot find a benefit for these 5 gentlemen, if I can call them that. Apart from the fact that Wike is a minister, none of them got anything. Makinde deserved to come back as Oyo State governor. He worked well. He was very pro-people. He got his second term, but it wouldn't have been a problem anyway, as we know, because there was some infighting with Adelabu and Teslim Folari in APC. So they were already divided. The rest of them, apart from Wike being minister of the FCT, which again I think is a strategic move by the APC to whittle Wike's powers and make sure that he can't go from state to state doing projects. So he's stuck in the FCT, just being managed. So the only place he can go to now is Rivers to go and quarrel and come back. They can't go to Ondo to go and launch a water project or a road project. So being FCT minister, I believe, is a way of caging Wike and reducing the opportunity of him to get more popular. Again, poor example of opposition, because not only did the PDP suffer a loss, the country is suffering immensely from bad leadership. So now this is the most important part of all this, because I think that no matter what politicians do, at the end of the day, the citizens are the ones that have the final say. Whether you want to argue that they always rig elections or not, I tell you something. If everybody in this country came out on election day and stood in the line to vote, no matter how much they read, they will not be able to get the right numbers. I've been saying this for the last 20 years, that if everybody just came out, and you can see this demonstrated time and time again when you look at the number of people that come out to vote, it's always a small number, 15%, 20% of the voters' population, not the country's population, the voting bloc, 15%, 20%, in some places 10%. You know, I mean, just imagine if it was an exam and they were marking your attendance and you had 10%, you won't pass that course. So it's sufficient to say that the citizens have a powerful role to play, even with opposition politics. So I always say that, in my view, that I think the citizens should always never side with any government in power. I see this being done, in the UK here, where when you interview the average citizen, yeah, they may like a particular party, but the party that is in power is always the party that worries them, because they believe that party is the one that's making all the plans and policies that are making their lives harder. So whether that party does its best or not, they're likely to criticize that party. So we in Nigeria must begin to see parties in power as, as the enemies, in quotes, of Nigerians, so that we can always hold their feet to the fire, as the Igbo man will say. Make them, let them wake up in the morning and say, hey, these people are not going to let me rest today. Not that we should be like the ones that, oh, thank God they built a 2-kilometer road. Hey, the governor is doing well. Oh, they paid salaries. The governor is a genius. He's the best governor ever. He's paying pensions. All those things are things that they're not paying out of their pockets. In fact, those are things that we should not even be discussing in 2024. That somebody is paying salaries and pensions. I've not heard anybody in America or the US or Sweden or even South Africa, commend somebody, even Ghana, commend somebody for paying salaries and pensions. So this should, give us some perspective onto how ridiculous we've turned, how little we ask from our politicians. Let me put it like that. So we must stop endorsing and applauding mediocre performances by politicians. We must be greedy. So when somebody does 20 kilometers, you say, but sir, they say another 30 kilometers. When are you going to do that one? You don't, thank you, but there's still more to do, sir. When can we expect that one? Because you want to put these people constantly, let them come to work every day and be happy to go home and go and rest. Not that the ones that come up and they will start wearing ashwebi and dancing up and down the town in private jets and attending parties and making a mockery of the citizens that are suffering. I think it's time for us to really stand up to our politicians and make sure that we are even louder than the voice. We're the biggest opposition in the country. So to conclude, I will say that opposition is even more important than the government, because once a party wins an election, you can see they kind of become confused, arrogant, perhaps a little bit lackadaisical. They become monsters sometimes. They just believe that, well, we've won and there's nothing anybody can do about that. And so the other thing I always say, that the main opposition might not be so you may not like the PDP because you feel that they are not much better than the APC. But if you see the person that is likely to win the election, support him or her or them, because if you support someone that cannot win, you are just going to allow the one that you don't like at all to win. So always go for the one that is most likely to win and ask for general support so that they can actually upstate the government. Even if we're just doing musical chairs with them, at least they know that if you want to stay for 8 years, you have to perform to a certain extent. We create competition amongst the 2 or 3 political parties and make sure that they know that, if you don't do well, you're out in 4 years. So everybody will you will find that over time, politicians will improve their performances and the citizens will benefit from it. And then when that person wins as well, we abandon them too and start following opposition as citizens, because what we want is a better quality service from our politicians, and we do not want them to fall asleep again at the wheel. The only thing I didn't add, which I was going to explain, I normally do explain this at the beginning, is the way the parliament system works in the UK versus how we work in Nigeria. So essentially, in the UK, you have a parliamentary system. So everybody is a member of parliament. And then from that bunch, you have the prime minister selected from. So first of all, before you can be a member of parliament, you must have won your local election to represent your people in the House of Reps. Let's call it that. It's called the parliament here. Then, if you want to even become, and this is the interesting part, you want to become a minister, you also have to, first of all, be representing somebody in the parliament. So you have to be a House of Rep member to be selected by the prime minister to even be in his cabinet. So what that does, and I think they use a similar system in Singapore, is that for you to, first of all, be able to make decisions or work in government, you have to have local support. It's something that if you watch Jonathan as he heralded in 2015, you could see Okonjo-Iweala will go to a campaign in Delta, Akim Manisha will go to a campaign in Ogun State, and Obasanjo did the same thing. It was the Lee Kuan Yew experiment, where you take technocrats and try and turn them into politicians because of the knowledge they have, so that when they are in government, they are able to, really effect change at an international kind of globally recognized level. So in the UK now, for instance, even the opposition parties also need for you to be an opposition leader. So essentially, you have the prime minister, then you have the leader of the opposition. If I tell you something, you may not believe it, but their salaries are very similar. Yes. The allowances may not be, because one is prime minister and would have a lot of more responsibilities, but their salaries are almost the same. Then you have what they call the shadow cabinet. So these are people who are also elected by the opposition party, the largest opposition party, not just a mixture of them, but the one that came second in elections, will now elect their own team. So they elect their own minister of finance, minister of the budget, minister of housing, and so on and so forth, so that those people will sit side by side with the ministers of government and be challenging the policies and say, if we were in government, this is what we will do. So you have two sets of ministers. One cannot make decisions for the country, but they are there to sit and challenge the ones that do. And they also get a similar salary, similar staffing as the ministers that are proper ministers. So you can see how they thought about their politics, that they want the opposition to be so strong that they have the same kind of financing, they get the same salaries, even though they didn't win the elections, to be able to challenge so that the country can grow. And I think it's always important for me to talk about this, because I think recently in Nigeria, we heard that the House of Reps, one of the members suggested something like this. And I think that it would really be good for politics, so that, people are a bit more able to challenge government in authority. They have the same kind of funds that the government people receive, so they can challenge them. They can have staff, they can hire people from the World Bank, experts who they will pay fat salaries because they're in opposition and they need to challenge these policies, which means they need a think tank to be able to do that effectively, so that when they come into power, you already know who is going to be their minister when they win an election, because they already have a shadow cabinet there waiting. I hope on that note, let me stop there, and I hope that you have learned a little something from me today. Now we can probably do questions. Can you hear me? Oops. Hello?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. I
Oh,
hope you're
yeah,
able
we
to hear
can
me through
hear
all
you.
that.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
great.
Yes, we were.
Because as
Thank
I
you
stopped the
very
president,
much.
everyone was frozen. I was
We'll
like,
take
I've been talking to
questions. A
myself for 1 hour.
couple of hands are already up.
All right, great.
No, sorry. I think it's my network
Okay, great. Okay,
fluctuating.
great. Fantastic.
I'll ask Dami Max his question, so we can start just going to the questions. Dami, I've asked you to unmute.
Hello, sir. Great presentation, and you touched on a lot of diverse points. I think we had in a previous session we did cover the discussion about the parliamentary system, And from looking from just observing how obviously the last nearly 12 months of the current government has gone, I do think that there is going to be a lot more value from, especially the Senate, having some sort of we're enhancing their querying power. Unfortunately, yes, if you're running a house system, you've got a party that has a majority of the house, so pretty much they will back their candidate who is the president. But I think we've even got to a point within the Nigerian politics that even the ruling party within the Senate are even very much they're trying to within as a senator, some people are trying to distinguish and disassociate themselves with certain policies, certain events that have happened. I it's just a bit it's I wonder what can be done in terms of recalling, because obviously we've spoken about the constitution and we said that yes, even local governments or council members are able to recall their senators. How do we speed these processes up? Because the rules are, and this is what we've spoken about throughout the whole college, the constitution is there. It's the way it's practiced, right? All these rules are there. They're never practiced. They're never put emphasis on. How can we start to speed up that process of recalling candidates and candidates actually coming back to their local governments and then going back to the Senate to give a statement based off of, oh, my local people said that they stood strongly about against this. There's been multiple waves of things that you'll say, wow, this is happening, and there's no voice of the people, even though these people are elected. It's just a private members club at this point.
Exactly, and that's a really good point that you make, because I've talked about two things a lot in my life. One of them is the way that the recall process works, because I've studied that, and we just never have the look. Think about it like this: when I'm talking about an election and 10% of the people on the register come out to vote, in a recall process, you need to have a certain majority of the people that are registered to vote, not the people that come out that day. They will say, okay, everybody that comes out for the recall, if you get 50%, you're gone. You need to get, I think, maybe 50% of the votes. I'm not sure about the numbers now, but I know that of the people that are registered to be able to get a recall, not the people that voted now. So if 10% voted, you need to get 50% of people to vote for the recall. So you and I know that number is never going to turn up for a recall. So except they're really angry, but you will never be able to get that majority, because the politicians, they are the ones that own the system. They made these laws. Then they ask themselves when they're making the laws, but come, what if my people try and recall me by mistake? Let me be careful. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen? So they've obviously put things in the process to make sure that a recall is a mathematical impossibility. You can quote me anywhere. I also consulted for INEC. I think that's not one of the things I've mentioned, for a couple of years, around 2002 to 2001. So I do know of the intricacies with the electoral system as well. And it's just unfortunate. But one of the things you said, which I don't want us to lose sight of, is that you can see that, in some instances, when people, especially politicians, go to their village, maybe, or they talk to their constituents in the village via their constituency office, and they hear what is going on, the pains, they cannot help but come back to the Senate or the House to come and complain about those. I'm sure you guys saw the video of the guy who had in Ekiti, who had the kings kidnapped. And you could see him crying, because these things are now closer to home. That is why it's so important that and that's why I love the parliamentary system, because you are representing somebody, you cannot behave anyhow, because the person you are representing is also watching you as a minister, as a government appointee, so that if you do anything, you are done. And here in this country, you can see that the recall process has worked several times. I mean, there's a story of this Nigerian woman, I can't remember her name now, who lied about a speeding ticket. I mean, she didn't kill anybody or smuggle drugs across the border, but it just goes to show you the seriousness at which people look at politics in this country. The first thing that happened was our party, first of all, removed that from as a member of the party. She was independent, and the recall process was carried out, and she was removed. Even though they didn't jail her, which she would need, basically to remove an MP, you have to jail them for, I think maybe more than 6 months or a year or something. But they gave her a suspended sentence, and so she didn't go to jail, but she was still convicted. But she could still serve as an MP. But the people recalled that they were like, no, we don't want you anymore because you've proven to be dishonest. Just over something like a speeding ticket. A speeding ticket is probably like £200 or £300. I mean, she definitely could afford that, and she could have taken the points off her license as well, and get a suspended license. That would not have cost her as much as what this has cost her. But it just goes to show you that a system that doesn't tolerate nonsense doesn't tolerate nonsense. It's what I said about the people. If people are serious, politicians will be serious too. I hope that helps to answer some of your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask Yuri to unmute and ask his question. Yuri, you can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Lecturer, and good evening, class.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for a very informative lecture. I have 2 questions. The first one, sir, at what point do you draw a distinction between opposition politics and a set of unpatriotic citizens whose intention is to sink the ship of state with everybody in it, irrespective of how valuable the contribution of other members of that state? I ask this question in relation to the 5 set of guys that you showed us in one of those slides while you were discussing with us. If you follow the activities of these young men all through their stay in power, and later on when things did not favor them and they started unleashing their evils, I don't know whether we can qualify that to be opposition. That's my first question, sir.
Okay. So I said that, like I said in the slide, it's an example of bad opposition.
Sorry to interrupt, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. I think you should just ask your 2 questions so he will just
Okay, I was going to say, yeah, just ask
at the same time.
Ask the second question as well, so I can take
Okay,
them both.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Then the second question revolves around the possibility of getting a superior argument on policy issues across to a government in power from the opposition angle. I ask this because over the years, from my personal experience, I've discovered that governments in Nigeria are very repressive to opposition, and oftentimes, however logical and however intellectual your argument or superior your argument about a particular policy may be, they will tell me to be the fact that you lost an election and then you're crying wolf and all of that. Just yesterday here, I had an argument with a set of young men on the current administration. I said, look, it took President Tinubu how many months to set up a cabinet? That sends a very bad signal to the investor community, and then we were just back and forth, and these guys, because they are in government, there was no rubbish they didn't make of how that argument was. I was even trying to make a reference to something. They say no, all of that. So how do you get a superior argument on a policy issue across to a government in power? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me answer the first one first. I think the second one is a very interesting question. The first one, I mean, that is not the way to be opposition. That essentially is the worst way. I even prefer it. Like people will say, but the people they did it, the article they did to left the party. I say, yeah, but at least he had the decency and the courage to first of all leave the party before he started fighting against the party. That's the least that you can do if you're going to work for another party, to leave the party so that at least you know you're no longer a member of the party. I am not been. I mean, look at someone like, in fact, all those people actually contested elections. I mean, most of them at least contested elections under the banner of the PDP. either they had a successor they wanted to put in place, or something else. And it's almost as if you are trying to spoil something and then benefit from it at the same time. I mean, it's just, you are right, it's unpatriotic, it's a very shameful way to act. It shows a lack of decency and lack of integrity, and it should be something that none of us would like. I don't know how their children or their family members feel when they look at them today and say, okay, guy, okay, so what did you get? Not if the country was even good. I always have this argument during Buhari's time that when you fight for somebody, you must also have the courage to fight against that person if they disobey, if they disuse your loyalty and your trust. If you have given your opinion and staked your own reputation on the line for somebody, and they don't do well, you owe it to yourself to save your own name. So say, this person, I'm so disappointed, even show the anger to them. But we have a country where even when somebody's on fire, people will tell, don't worry, don't pour water. The wind will blow it away. It's that kind of, is a very sad way of looking at things. And on to the second question, which I find is one of those questions that it also comes back to what I said about the atmosphere, because it's almost like when you are telling off your child. Sometimes you have to do tough love, but it is your acts after you tell off that child, your acts of love towards that child or towards that spouse or towards that family member or whoever it is, that show that it was just that act that they committed that you're angry about. You still love them. So again, it is how you present the case. A lot of our leaders are tone deaf, not even in government, even in opposition. There are so many things I've said in the PDP. I always used to think things like, one day somebody will come and spend a tenth of the money you are spending and win an election because that person truly cares about people. So what does it cost you to leave the comfort of your air conditioned room and go to an IDP camp on a normal day when it's not election period? What does it cost you to do things in opposition, sponsor sports things as a party, do events, sponsor a tech center, a health facility as opposition, since you have some states that you even have governors, so that people will see what government will be like when you are in power, what their lives will be like when you're in power. What does it cost the PDP in opposition to take this, even if they have take two states and make them model states and say to people, can you see these two states? Like when Mimiko was governor of Ondo, I remember they used to say neighboring states, the women used to go to Ondo to go and have their babies because they had a great mother and child center. That even became a problem for them because they were not like, oh, we want to help our own women first before we can start helping outsiders. But the point I'm making, if you use one good thing that they do, Amechi did good schools in Rivers at the time when he was governor. Mimiko was doing good hospitals. If you combine those two things in a few states, you don't have to build all these things in all the local, just do a few here and there, and then tell the people, look, this is our model as a party. But like I say, our people are told, our politicians are, honestly, I've analyzed it, I've said that maybe when they get into power and they just sit on a chair, their brain just vaporizes. Because I do not understand how someone can preach to you so much and you still won't take it. So I think they have a mindset that they always should talk to us. And I'm glad that what happened, to us in this last election. Because they had these small boys, what do they know? How many elections have you won? Well, we're like, we don't have to win an election. We're on the streets. And we know this thing will happen eventually. Just wait. So now, at least they should have eaten humble pie. But you'll be surprised that next election, you see the same thing that you saw that led them to this loss repeating itself. So, it's even not only parties in government, even opposition parties, the ability to listen is, I think, one of the most difficult things for a Nigerian. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what I believe. I think people just do not listen enough. And I think we need to develop that culture of actually listening to critical opinion and then going to reflect on it and trying to act on it. I always even tell them, why don't you just test this theory out and see if it works? And if it doesn't work, you don't have to use it again. So it's a difficult thing. I think that one, we are going to be here all day if we try to answer it.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll ask um, Elu Banju to unmute and ask this question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, in the slide, I can see something like this main contest is the opposition main role is to question the government of the day and hold them accountable. My question really goes to the to among party activists at the Democratic and Republican conventions and found agreement with the distinguished personnel in the Allied Rules and syndicate of military personnel in measures of some plurality system. You can see among those people there, we have those ones we have like the largest non-government parties. Do they have influence over government, over the military? Do they have influence over the civilian in the out of hierarchy to system of government ruling and authority in making decisions?
I think that once you have the military setting, the military works in a definitive hierarchy. The man who has the most medals and the longest rank is the boss. What he says goes. You don't argue. In the military, they say the only thing you do is say yes, sir. Even when they greet you in the morning, they say good morning, morning, sir. It will be midnight.
When they are giving orders.
Morning, sir. They don't greet afternoon, sir. Morning, sir. I look at the time. They say no, it's morning. No, don't argue. So when you have that kind of authoritarian rule, you dare not. They not born you well, make you talk, say, "Oga, this road where you pass, no good." The military will just tell you to do frog jump. So that's why a lot of people, when people call for military rule in Nigeria, I always laugh. I say, I'm a child of the military. My father's brother was a military man. So I was immune. But the things I saw, the things that I witnessed, what the people go through, the things that I understand about the military, because I had a lot of family friends, people that were generals in the army. I even had personal friends that I had worked with, people like Abacha, with IBB. So my knowledge of Nigeria is from I was just a privileged young boy at 30 years old to be sitting with the man who lowered the Union Jack on Independence Day as his friend, not as an uncle or anything. So I learned a lot about, the way Nigeria runs. And I always tell people when they call for a coup that do not ever wish your life for a coup, because the question at the back of all our minds is who is going to be the leader of the country when that coup happens. Is it going to be an Abdul Salam Abubakar who was happy to get out of power within a year or two? Or is it going to be an Abacha who, as you people may not know, was just one timid guy? He wasn't a brutal guy at all. But as you can see with government, even with civilian governments, you can see all the things that have been unearthed after Iron Man Buhari has gone. Buhari that was the Iron Man. You can see how somebody will be telling you that somebody went and forged Buhari's signature to collect money in central bank. And the person he wants to collect the money from didn't have the sense to call Buhari and ask him that, sir, should I give this person the money? He just gave him the money. It is exactly what I'm trying to say, that if that can happen in a civilian administration, what will happen in the military era? People will take the law into their hands, and they will make the leader timid. The leader will be in his... Abacha never came out of the villa for how many years before he died? He was too scared to go anywhere because they had painted a picture for him. So again, I ask you, when the coups happen, who is going to be the head of state? Is it going to be a gentleman who speaks well, who went to Harvard? Or is it going to be one guy who is even a low-ranked officer who has never seen 1 million naira in his life? That is the danger with military coup. So once you have a military coup, forget about criticizing anybody. Just sit down and wait and pray to God that they hand over power when they are ready, so that we can continue in the normal state. And that's why a lot of people don't like the military government, because it's an authoritarian government. Nobody dares question what they do.
Of course. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I'm going to ask Tango to unmute and ask a question. Idamoku Tango, you can unmute and ask a question.
Very much for the privilege to ask my questions. I have two questions. One, as regards to the opposition party in Nigeria, my question is, could we say that we really have an opposition party in Nigeria, a strong one, or people or political jobbers who are much more interested in winning election, and when election does not favor them, they will tend to rant and say all sorts of things and get the incumbent government? That's the first question. Then secondly goes to the office of the citizens. I was happy when you made mention that that citizens or some citizens, when the government pay a salary, they rejoice over it and make, say a lot of things. I've been having issues with one of my friends like that. What the person is just doing, because the current government in my state favors him, all you just do is, if the government, pave a 1 kilometer road, they will talk all this, that, and that, forgetting that this is the responsibility of this government. But once you are trying to say this is what we ought to do as a government, or what the government ought to do in a state, they will start attacking you, telling you that what has the previous government done that will make you to, start that this government is the best and all those kind of things. And then I found out that Nigerian politics is filled with, when the politics is favoring you, you see it as a good governance. And when it's not favoring you, you see it as a bad governance. And then conclude, and that is why I want to ask, sir, could we say that Nigerian democracy is found on full bellies and happy minds? Or could we say that we are just practicing a democracy instead of democracy? Thank you very much, sir.
Let me answer you in this way. We are practicing belletrocracy. What's a belle fool? I always say that one thing I can swear about in Nigeria is that nobody hates corruption. Nobody, not even you or me. I even did a talk in TEDx. If you have time, go and Google it. Corruption, the killer of good governance. It's an interesting one. I said there, everybody should raise up their hands and say, my name is so and so. I am a corrupt person. You are like, the children were like, no, we're not. I say, you are corrupt. Because today, if your father becomes governor, you will go and sit down inside official vehicle and they will carry you to school. That is corruption. If Clinton or any of the other children did that, the Americans will riot. Now, the issue which you highlighted, and it's a good question you asked, that do we actually have opposition or people who are just looking to make noise and make a name for themselves, so they will call them into the room and say, well, come and sit down and chop. I think the problem with Nigeria, and I am glad when I get introduced, they introduced me with what I did before I became a politician, and as I'm doing what I'm doing now. Because one of the things I always preach is that if you don't have a full-time job, don't go and do politics. Because me, I've spent money, I have lost money. Even when I'm not contesting, I sponsor candidates across board. And sometimes it's with regret. I'll be like, why do I keep up? Did they do jazz for me? But the point is, I'm so desperate to help young people succeed that I can't resist or to have a government that is even a bit sensible, not the great. I know the kind of leader I want, but I know that leader is not possible in Nigeria today. So I'm realistic. I will follow the one that can deliver that leader. I won't follow the one that I want to, the one that I know that, this one will enter, then the one I want to come after him. Because, and sometimes you the person self, you don't say the person great like that. It's not your cup of tea, but you just know that at least it will make sense out of this senselessness. I think that a lot of people they don't have 9-to-5 jobs. They're not creating anything in society. They don't have a brand that is making money for them while they are sleeping or while they are awake. So when it comes to politics and they venture into politics, the minute they try and stay on the good lane, because staying on the good lane is a poverty lane. I won't tell you people lies. As people are here, I'm seeing you, NNPP, ABGA, this one, that one. If you are running a political party that is not in power in your state, or in your country, you are in the hunger lane. So it's likely that at some point you will try. It's even your family members that come call you and say, "Are you?" My family members are APC. They used to call me and tell me, "Are you not tired? Are you not tired of being in opposition?" But because it's not my career. I'm not a career politician. I always tell people I can wake up tomorrow and start selling pure water if I wanted to, and I will do well at it. So I'm like, I don't need to be in the ruling part. I'm not a government contractor. But because most people are looking for jobs, looking for business, they fall into that trap. Like my friends in Lagos would tell me before the election, Shola, how can you go? I cannot go against Tinubu. I have too much at stake in Lagos. So I'm just going to support him or keep quiet. Again, you see that. I know that these are people that are very wealthy, not even like me that I'm still struggling today, struggling tomorrow. They are very, but you see, even rich man, no one wahala. So it's a mentality issue that I think that we need to understand that it isn't even necessarily a bad thing. It isn't every person that is but sometimes it's just survival. And as human beings, the natural thing, if somebody comes out and puts a gun to your head, you won't say, "Shoot me now." You'll be like, please, 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 don't kill me. Even if you are the most miserable person on earth, you don't have any money, no food, you still want to die. So the point I'm making is that you should understand that in a country where there's no enterprise, where there's nothing to do for 80% of the population, this is what happens. People will just struggle. Once they see that there's no way, they will join the bandwagon. Let me just follow them and eat food, And it's unfortunate, but it's something that we have to understand that until Nigeria develops to a stage where people can wake up in the morning and feed themselves without any government or any family member, will always be in this cycle, unfortunately. That's the truth.
Thank you very much, sir. We still have a couple of hands up. I'll ask Umoren Mbokobong to ask his question. Umoren, you can unmute. I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Shola. Thank you very much for this session. I think I must really confess that this is really one of throughout this college period. I must really say so. My question is on opposition. You've made mention of opposition, going beyond political parties, because as citizens we have accountability check that we place on the government in power, to do the right thing. But I usually have a problem because I will also say that some people are not going to be happy with what I will say now, but it is the truth. Where in some part of our country, it is difficult for a particular set of people to wake up and stage protest against the government. Rather, they are being encouraged to pray for the government if the government is not doing well, instead of holding the government to accountability, demanding for what is theirs and what is rightfully the government's duties and obligation. So I have a problem with this because in as much as I'm concerned, we are going to move, but at a very slow pace, because a force of 100 million plus youth not being able to come together to wrestle and stage protests and demand accountability from the government just because of a particular teaching that people should not, stand up against the government. And yet things are going wrong. And yet there is massive deprivation of people's fundamental rights. The basic things of life are being denied them. And yet they don't seem to, participate and try to demand for these things. So I have a problem there. And then the question is, how do we tend to manage, these situations whereby some people are ready to do something, whereas on the other end, some other people are not ready. And then it becomes like there is, it's a divided camp against each other. just because, well, yet we are clamoring for the same thing, but some people are not willing to, put the effort and do the right thing. So how do we get to manage these things?
This is one of the greatest, challenges for me as someone who has ventured in politics, at federal, state, local level. I see this lack of conviction from people. I always say that, Nigeria will have to die before she can live. And it's practically saying that the citizens will have to come to a point where the only option before them is to go and fight that government before they do it. We are so resilient. In this country, if a politician says, if they go and dig a politician's social media post, don't even, I'm even going far. A TV presenter, they go and dig their post from when they were in secondary school, where they said there are too many black people around them, or so they will cancel that, and that person will resign from their seat. Or a TV presenter, I didn't say a politician, or not elected, they will sack the person, because there is zero tolerance for anything that is going to bring a brand or a person or an establishment to disrepute. In Nigeria, it's the opposite. The more scandal a politician has, the more acceptable he is. Because, again, that's what I said before. I said, none of us hate corruption. We just hate it when somebody is oppressing us with it. So, yes, Seyi Tinubu is in a jet. When I was running for office, one of the things that I wrote that angered my family members, I said, if I become governor of Lagos State, nobody with my surname, with my blood, from my lineage, will ever be a government appointee. They said, how can I say that? I said, that's how I feel about it. So you can even see that if I become governor now, my people will even be the ones that are telling the House of Assembly to impeach me. Because I'm not giving them contract, I'm not of use to them. They will be saying things like, even if family members are suffering, as if it is my father's money I'm spending. So, I always say that it is this lack of discipline. And again, let me forgive them, because sometimes it is a cultural thing. And this person, he was poor before. Look at him now, he has houses in Ikoyi and VI and Lekki and Bandana, because his brother was ordinary commissioner of women affairs in Lagos State. I'm just giving the most stupid example. And the truth is that so people are waiting for their turn, and look, everybody will say to you that, it's not, you can't do this. Seyi Tinubu is not fine. If your father was president, will you be walking on the road? When you see the jet parked there, you will not say, guy, I want to quickly go to Abuja, carry me. It will be very hard for you to resist those things at the time, because it is easy to sit here in judgment of others when you have never been in their position, whether good or bad.
Yeah,
and so it is a difficult, I always say to people, when all the things that APC say about PDP, are they not worse? PDP, they say somebody reversed into CBN and drove away with, till today, we don't know who that person is, with $50 million. Today, we are hearing that somebody went and signed Buhari's to collect 60 million, or 6 million, we don't even know. The Zionists stole $200 million or $200 billion. We hear all sorts of stories today too. The point I'm making is that it's very easy to criticize until you are the one sitting in the chair. And because of that, perhaps we should not be so critical about the things that we know that we ourselves will tolerate. Because it is what deceives people to think that, when this person gets there, they'll be better. I always used to speak to people that the honest truth, if Peter Obi was president, he will cut the cost of governance. But his government will probably be the most unstable government in Nigeria. Because one thing I can tell you for free, if you cannot play politics with Nigerian money, you cannot stay in office. Do you understand? Because this suffering, that people are telling me today, I won't mention the person's name, somebody that I know is the very senior position in this government, is like a bigger brother to me. People came to complain to me about him, that even in his office, the people in the office are complaining that there's nothing. You know, those kind of things, when I hear it, I'm baffled that there's nothing, no job, no chua, no money. People are just coming to work and collecting salary. I think that is a bad thing in itself. You know, so the question I'm asking is that, is this like, look, with the level of poverty, people still earning 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 is about 40 something pounds in the UK today. So someone is still collecting for so many pounds a month as a salary, and that person in Nigeria is a big person, big man, 100K. The guy, he don't try small. But the point is that with people still earning that kind of wage, you can never get rid of this mindset of, I need extra money, because they do need extra money. It's what I talked about in my TEDx speech as the corruption of need. That it is not because of greed that they are doing corruption. This one is need. They need, when they look at their salary, they transport this one down. By the end of 2 weeks, salary has finished. No more money to even go to work. They start to calculate. And one person promised me, that man is coming to sign his contract paper today. You know what? I'll just bone face for him and tell him I can't find it, so that he will give me something. People start to get creative. So, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with, you know, our standards in terms of wages, in terms of how people earn money, so that we can have a society where people are generally satisfied. So when you catch somebody stealing, you know that, this one is greed. But when you catch somebody stealing because they are child in the hospital, they need 20,000. Nobody is kind enough to give them that 20,000. So they have to find a corrupt way of getting it to save their child's life. Are you going to hold that kind of person accountable? Will you not yourself be sounding like the devil? You know, so it is the society that we live in that creates the leaders, and the environment also. So we need to, first of all, find leaders who are courageous enough to tell each other the truth. That, look, this country cannot work as is. You know, first of all, I always say this, and I want to say this very importantly, that we are a poor country. When people tell you Nigeria is rich, is blessed, is this, is that, let me tell you why we're poor. Because our entire budget has been, an article said it a few weeks ago, has been around $30 billion a year. Now, should I make you laugh? The UK, with half our population, their budget for last year, that's ending in April, was $1.2 trillion. Our own is $34 billion. Their own is, let me repeat again, $1.2 trillion. This is the country that developed. So the person that is driving a Ferrari is using 1.2 billion to just maintain that Ferrari. You that are driving B2 with 3 tires, you are using 30 billion to try and refurbish the B2. So you see, we even as a developed country, they are still spending tons more money than us because they have the money. We don't. So until we develop a way where the country is, an article said this so brilliantly, because I had the argument somewhere that even in 2003, when I was in the Senate, it was first brought to my attention by my boss, Senator Ogubanjo, and he said to me, Baba Shola, you know what? You know, we're actually a poor country. I said, sir, no. He said, look at this South African budget compared to our own. And I sat down and looked at it. South African budget at that time was about 120 billion. South Africa that had at that time uninterrupted power, our own was like 24 billion, something like that. So I was like, what? And I started looking at comparison. So until we get to a stage where we can actually create an environment where the country is earning and budgeting like 150, 200 billion every year, Nigeria will never develop. You will never have people earning $1,000 a month easily. You won't have it. You know, and until you get to that situation where people can feed themselves and fend for themselves, there isn't going to be a shortcut approach to good governance and good systems in Nigeria. I'm sorry that I dragged that, but I just have to make that point.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
I think we have one more time to go.
Okay.
I'll ask Oluwakeji to ask his question. Oluwakeji, you can unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah. My question is that is there a possibility that we can ever do without opposition in Nigeria? Is there a possibility that we can do with opposition in any way?
I think it would be the most dangerous. That's like having a military government, essentially. You know, opposition is the critical friend of government. It is the best friend of the people. It should be. So without opposition, if you have a one-party system in Nigeria, then you can basically just admit that you have a military rulership and it is whatever the boss says that everybody does. You know, I think opposition is essential in any fledgling democracy. Even the most developed democracies, they need opposition. If not, imagine if Trump didn't have opposition and he continued doing what he was doing, what would America be by now? So even though he may win the next election, at least he knows that life after the election, the next 4 years, may be hell. So he will at least tread a bit more cautiously, we hope. He will tread a bit more cautiously. But that is what opposition is, a checkmate for the party in power at any time. It is a must. And I repeat, it is a must. We cannot do without it. We must not do without it.
Thank you very much. Dami, I don't know if yours is still a question again, because you had asked, maybe you just didn't put your hands down. But I'll give you the chance if you have another question. Please, let's make our questions brief. So we can round up.
I did have a second question.
Oh, you beat it again. Dami, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did have a second question. It's mainly around what are your recommendation in terms of frameworks that could be enacted short term, long term, to kind of put us on a dialogue path, because obviously even stuff like voting, we don't even know how your representative voted in a key critical vote. Like, you know, in America or in the UK, they will publish the list of voters on the left or the right side of a vote. So just stuff like that in terms of actually knowing where people's intentions are aligned and how to kind of sway people back to the intentions of people. So what frameworks and policies do you think can really enhance the democratic side of the opposition?
I think that, I mean, what we call open government is obviously the best form of democratic rule, where you know because the person that's representing you, essentially, you sent him there to do your bidding. So you must know at any point in time. I think to a large extent, there are times when the Senate and the House will go into it's kind of like a secret meeting. But most of the time, they call it the closed session. But most of the time, their voting is done so like in the open, so to speak, yes. But for instance, there have been times in the past, I don't know if you are aware, when they were voting for the constitutional amendment during Obasanjo's time to extend his tenure to the third term. We called it the third term tenure at the time. And the Senate president did say that people must not only vote, but they must also speak and tell people where they are, you know. And so it was interesting that for the first time in the history of the Senate, we were able to see who was voting where, who supported third term and who didn't. And that was a defining moment in our democracy, because of the openness of that, people were not now able to go and support in secret. Even some of them are collected money. You know, this one is not gist. We were in Abuja. They collected money, but they now could not support it again. They were like, if I go and do this, my people will lynch me. So, you know, it was interesting. I think you are right. It will help strengthen democracy to a large extent if there was a bit more openness and transparency in decision making especially within the parliament. The government, maybe not so much, but within the parliament, it would be good to say. But what I always say to people is that the good thing about the parliament is that it's the best form of government, because everybody reports to their constituent at a very local level. So no matter how much you hide in Abuja, you still have to go back and ask them for their votes, and they can be brutal. So at the end of the day, the people still want to hear your voice, even though you are voting in secret, but they want you to come out and tell them how you feel about certain issues. You can see how all of a sudden the senators and House of Reps are complaining about the hardship in the country across board, because they now are under immense pressure themselves to support people in their locality because there's a lot of poverty, a lot of suffering and hunger. So you see that eventually what happens is that people can no longer hide behind APC and PDP. And people will just come out and cry to the government that, look, we cannot go on like this. It's getting tough. And I think, at some point, the reset button will be pushed. And I think that we're very near that point. I thought Buhari's government would be it, but I think we're going to, experience in the next 2 or 3 years, where people will just wake up and realize that the most important thing is to get this country fixed so that everybody can go on their own. No longer trying to repress a certain group of people so I can give them 5 naira to vote for me. It won't be about that anymore. It'll just be about, let's have a country where all of us can live in peace. Everybody, the poor man self is happy. He has his house, his children go to school. The rich man too can go around. Because think about it. I was thinking about it the other day in the shower that, do you know that this life is so funny that even in the UK here, it has become so bad that even the really rich people that live in the highbrow areas can no longer wear their flashy watches while they are driving in their Lamborghinis. Yes, I said the poor are really fighting back. They will chase them down, break the glass and stab them, collect their watch. It has become a pandemic. It has calmed down over the last few months, but it became so bad that people that go shopping at Harrods and this and that, when you come out, you're even afraid because these boys will be looking at you if you buy, so I'm thinking that even in Nigeria now, think about it, if you buy a car, you are forever looking over your shoulder before you enter the car, before you come out of your house, because you're afraid somebody is watching you trying to take the car or rob you because you are wealthy. And I even joked about it one time we had a bulletproof car. So I said to someone, I said, even this bulletproof car, at some point, you have to leave the car now. When you get where you're going, you shall come down. So, at the end of the day, you can't live like that because it's just so unproductive. You want to live in a place where your state of mind is always free. You're not always panicking when you go out. You can't even enjoy going out at night or during the day because you're afraid something is going to happen to you. And that's why I said the politicians, in fact, they themselves are seeing with what is happening in Abuja, that eventually it will hit them. It's just a matter of time. I think that should be the reset button. And I pray they press it before something really bad happens.
All right, thank you, sir. Please pardon me. We still have one more hand. I'll ask Dr. John Imoke to ask his question. Then we have 2 more questions in there. I think I saw 2 in the chat box. So we'll just take that and close. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir, for a very elaborate presentation. I just have a very short question, though. My question is, considering how significant the opposition is meant to contribute to a democratic state, would it be out of place for the government in power to provide a conducive environment for opposition to strive? Looking at the context of our country, Nigeria, you would agree with me that usually it's a cat and dog kind of affair with opposition and sitting government. But I don't know, is there a burden on the sitting administration to ensure that opposition strive? Because like you said, opposition is supposed to be a check and balance kind of thing for the incumbent administration. But we've seen in the past where the sitting administration use the instrumentality of states to see how they can squeeze the opposition to a point where they shouldn't exist. I don't know what your take is, because from your presentation, it seems to me that it's also a burden for the government to make the environment conducive for opposition to strive, because it also helps them to deliver on the dividends of democracy. Correct. I don't know what your comment is on that. Thank you.
I mean, this is a very good point. And, it's funny, nobody has ever asked me this question in this perspective before. And, it's interesting because at the moment I'm watching a series on Formula One. I mean, I wanted to be a race car driver when I was young, but I lost interest. I just saw this series on Netflix called Drive to Survive. And I've just been watching it. And I can see even in that, the teams, the way they compete, they're friends one day, another day they are fighting. And it's healthy competition, but sometimes it gets out of hand. Even within the same team, two drivers will crash into themselves because one wants to be the one that is the faster driver than the other. And they're racing against other people. So I'm just trying to explain to you that, I always watch these things, not because I just love cars, but I want to learn about the experiences. It just goes to show you that in anything that involves a winner and a loser, it's very unlikely that anybody will play fair. That is where the laws of the country and the independent electoral body come into play. The country must reform in a way that look, I even told, for you to know how far I've gone in my research, in my thinking, in my planning, in my proposals, I even told the PDP that, okay, fine, you have 10 or 11 governors. Let them fund a shadow cabinet of ministers to shadow the party in power, so that these guys are the guys that you and I would choose for ministers if we were to form a government today. Let them start using that as a practice session. You can afford it, give them cars, give them a nice office, let them be well staffed with researchers, PhD analysts, so that people, when they talk to government will say, hey, where did they find these people, But again, deaf ears. This is what I'm trying to say, that it's not even a matter of government making opposition's role easy. Does opposition want to make their own role easy? If the opposition will not even empower themselves to do these things, why do you then expect government to do it? So the point I'm making is that unless our laws are changed, like the UK's, where it will be the duty of government to, or maybe an independent body, to fund opposition parties with the same salary level and the same kind of office structure that the ruling ministers have, then we can say we'll have a level playing field. But until that happens, my brother, I don't think we have a chance in the world to get this thing right. And I think that is the sadness that is the reality for us as we are today. But hopefully, if the opposition can even wake up and do what we've proposed, and this was proposed to them in 2016, not yesterday, then at least we would have tried and tested that. And perhaps on the back of that, we could have then taken a law into the House to say this is how it should be done. We must fund the opposition party to be able to do this, because we can see the benefits when opposition funded themselves. But it is not right for the governor to be funding the party in this way, because the state's money they're using. Let us now let the federal government fund that as a separate budget, so that we can have a viral opposition. And maybe if that law had passed, maybe we had a good leader in place that just say, well, it's just money, let's just give them and let them do their job. Then maybe we would have a chance. But my brother, nobody, even football clubs, you can see how competitive they are. Nobody's going to allow you to be a viral opposition. Nobody will do it. They want to make sure that they win the next election. So it's a winner takes all in this game. I'm sorry.
Thank you again, sir. Just to read one question in the chat box. In relation to supporting the opposition, to what extent should the people support what the opposition is doing? I want to comment on them. But let's answer that first, sir. What do you have to say?
Okay, I think that it is not to support opposition because they are opposition. It's to support the good things that opposition is saying. So if opposition says, for instance, they want, for instance, before Tinubu became president, we were pitching to our candidate that we needed to scrap this low school fees thing and bring in a plan that would allow us to educate people in world-class institutions. That with this low school fees thing, it means that, and look, I think one time I took my nieces and my daughter to university their first year, and we went to 3 or 4 different universities in the UK on that day, because we had like 3 or 4 of them. We had a bus with the parents in it and their luggage, and we went to. So I was a chance to look at 3 or 4. And look, their hostel rooms were finer than people's houses. I mean, but they were not cheap. These people were paying as much as £10,000 a year, £12,000 a year for these hostel rooms. But the thing is that as parents, we don't have to bear that cost if we don't want to. They are entitled to student loans. that they will pay back when they start working. That's what they do with me. So the point I was trying to make is that little things like that, great policies that you feel that would significantly improve the kind. Look, I mean, I grew up on a university campus in Unilag. So from a child, I watched the hostels deteriorate from a hostel that I saw with my own eyes when my family members were in the hostel. It was one person in a room to 10 people in that same room. And, for me, it just doesn't make any sense, and it's because, it's like the story of a man who's living in a room and parlor and he has no children. Then he has one child. He doesn't have money to move out. You do cottage, 2 children, you do demarcation, 3 children, 4 children, family member will come and join them in that same place. You keep on adding more people because you don't have the funds to be able to build more facilities to accommodate the extra students that are coming in. But guess what? In this part of the world, if extra students are coming in, extra income. So the money they are bringing, use it to build more facilities to accommodate them. And until we get to that level, I believe that we won't be able to have functional universities and higher institutions, in Nigeria. You can see the private universities are doing a lot better because they are costing their student population and using that money to fund development in the universities. So it's the same way I would say that, there are good policies that we can implement if we even first of all realize that the policy is not about whether you're in opposition or in power. It's just basically, it's something that will help the country to build, better leadership for the future. So that the kind of people that were churning out from our universities and schools will be world-class, world standard. And Nigerians, when they go anywhere in the world, they shine. So it's very painful when I see where they've come from. Many people come out with 3rd degrees in Unilag, come to King's College London School of Economics, and get a master's a distinction in their masters. I mean, the people there look at them and say, were you daft in Nigeria and you're now smart here or what? So for me, we have a long way to go, but I think that it just starts with just the little things. Let's just do the little things. And, sometimes it's test and see. Test something and see if it works. If it works, let's do more of this. This one didn't work. We won't do this again. And I think with that, we'll have a great country and everybody will be proud of the achievements of any government in power.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I think we'll just have you say a last comment on the last question, because I think it will capture the essence of the college generally. And the last question is, must the opposition be a political party? Can't the citizens be the opposition? Maybe you just round up with that.
Say that again. Must the opposition what?
Must the opposition be a political party? Can't the citizens be the opposition?
Oh, of course. The challenge with that is that the citizens will then be opposition, which is fine. I mean, they need this political party needs support of citizens, and citizens should be the biggest opposition. But it is to get that, I always say something like, when people are fighting for something, everybody's fighting, like the Arab Spring, everybody was on the streets, so people were setting themselves on fire. When they now won the battle, who will be your leader? They will still go and bring one guy that did not help them fight to, let us choose this guy who doesn't even have the same mindset because they didn't think ahead. That's always the problem when citizens lead a fight. Everybody has their own impression, So me, I want this person, you want this person. We cannot agree on one single goal. So in the end, we're going to go in different directions, and guess who wins? The bad guy. It's what happened in 2023. So yes, we must allow citizens to take charge and also lend their voices, but they must look at the end game, and that's what political parties are able to do, because the political party's ambition is to become the one sitting on that chair. You always target that thing with criticism, but with also plans for elections and things like that. Citizens won't do that. Citizens will just say, I'm going to vote for this person. I'm going to vote, and on the election, everybody go and vote for their different candidates. In the end, the person who you don't want the most becomes president. And I think that is why it's still smart for the time being to be kind of, and that's why the two-party system works in the States. You know that it's either Republican or Democrat. There are other parties in the US, there are other parties in the UK, but you know that it's either Labour Party or the Conservatives in the UK. It's one or the other. Sometimes the Labour Party won't have enough majority. You have to join one smaller party to them, but largely is one of the two. Nobody else is going to come from anywhere. And if you can have that kind of system in Nigeria where you know it's between the devil and the deep blue sea, so to speak, then it will make it easier for people, citizens, to actually follow that path, you know. And I just encourage the politicians, especially the ones that are making the most dent, to slide back into one of these big parties and really try and make ways from in there, because at least you know that, you know, they have, together we have a chance of upsetting the government in power.
All right, thank you very much, sir. If we keep the questions going, we will not leave this place. We like your passion. We can see how much you are interested in Nigeria moving forward, and we appreciate all the insight you have given us. Look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being so patient and staying for this long. I know I talk a lot, but it's from a good place.
Yes, we don't
enjoy
mind.
the rest of your Sunday, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care,
I'm
everyone.
going to ask everybody to just, you can unmute and just say a big thank you to our facilitator for today. I'm allowing everyone to unmute and just say a big thank you to our facilitator for today before we go. Thank you, sir. I think they still cannot unmute, but we appreciate you, sir, on behalf of the class. We thank you, and thank you guys for remaining in class. See you guys next week. Charlie, is there any notice? Any other notices before we close for the day?
No. Thank you very much, sir.
So thank you, sir. Have a great week.